Alright, hello everybody, welcome back. Carl again. Today we're doing a new fish tank project. We are going to make a algae turf scrubber. So, here is the setup we're going to use. 5.5 gallon Aqueon aquarium. I have drilled the bottom here, as you can see, down there, and then I also drilled the side. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I have a 1/2 inch bulkhead here. I am going to use a 1/2 inch rigid poly pipe, and I'm going to pump it from the sump. And the fish tank is right here on the other side of the wall. You can see it just through there. So I'll pump it up. I'll run it over top of fabric netting. This will be the bar that holds the fabric net. This will be the connection I use. And you can see that's the... You can see this will be the 1/2 inch inlet. I just have an elbow here so that it'll fit nice. Over here on the side, and then I have a 3/4 inch bulkhead at the bottom, and I'll use a flexible pipe or tubing that'll run it back to the sump. Now I did that on purpose. I wanted a smaller inlet and a bigger outlet. I want to make sure I can handle the volume of water because I am going to be pumping it with a pump. I want to be able to make sure that gravity has enough momentum or force that the water will drain back down. I'm also going to put a float switch in here so if the water gets too high, it'll automatically cut the pump off and allow it to drain back down. The next step here, I'll put a video, a link here in the description for how to drill the aquarium. I didn't show a video of this one. I have another video I did on a 10-gallon tank. The only thing I would be cautious about, this glass is really thin. You know, the bigger tanks have thicker glass. I tried to drill a 10-gallon 2 holes here. So I got the first one drilled at the top. I tried to drill another one kind of down here at the bottom, and it cracked the glass. So that's why on this tank I ended up doing one at the very bottom and one on the side panel. So just keep that in mind. Now the next step I'm going to do here is show you the table saw setup so we can cut the groove to hold the fabric net. So we'll just get you set up on a table saw and we'll run over that. Okay, so what I have here is just a piece of scrap, a lumber, and I did some of the setup already. So I'm just going to clamp this lumber into place. Okay, so what I have is the table saw just barely raised enough that it's going to cut the PVC here. So what I don't want to do is, because I'm putting a cap on the end and then a 1/2 inch bar, I want that to be full. So I don't want to cut past these lines. So the way I determined that was I put my PVC pipe and I run it to it just barely. So I run it until it just barely touches the bottom of the PVC. And then I mark this spot on the table saw. So what I'm going to do is move actually this mark that I have here down. Okay, so this mark will show me then where I need to stop cutting. So what I'm going to do is when I plunge this piece into the blade, I'll go to this point here and stop. Now what I did to get these marks is I just put the caps on, pushed them down and then marked them. And then I left it just a little bit proud of this point. It's a lot easier to cut this material than try to start over. So I'll cut this piece, I'll stop at that line, I'll flip it, I'll cut it this way, I'll stop at that line, and then what I'll end up with is a groove in between the 2 pencil marks so that my caps will fit on here and then I can hang the net material in the middle. Okay, just a quick safety note. Please be really careful. This saw will cut your finger off. It doesn't care if it's your finger or PVC. So I have 2 push sticks here because I'm not going to put my fingers anywhere near that blade. And I'm actually going to reposition the camera to the back corner here so that I can see the side of the blade. I also have the blade just barely enough where it's just going to cut through the bottom layer of this PVC. Okay, so I let the saw blade stop before I move it. You can see I can actually go just a little bit further here to cut to that line. But in the meantime, I'm going to flip it this way, and I'm going to cut to this line over here. So we'll just put it on. We'll get the push stick set up. And that way when I turn the saw on, it's going to want to shoot it out. So I'm going to make sure I hold it so that it does not do that. Okay, so you can see here I went just a little past the line and it put me right where I want to be. The other note to remember is if you're pushing it this way and you go too far and you catch the end of this stick into this table saw, it's going to want to pull down. So just remember, keep it flat on the table, and if the saw catches this black push stick, just let it go. You'll also notice here I am not standing traditionally where you would here in the front. I'm actually on the side the same way you are. That way if anything wants to shoot away, it's going to shoot into debris behind it and not hit me. Alright, so we'll just cut this last little piece here and we'll be done. Alright, now if you want to clean the rest of that up, I'm just going to use an X-Acto knife, and I can actually clean right down in here and get these pieces cleaned up all the way. Okay, this is the netting that I'm going to use. This will be my algae screen. You can get this at Walmart or any craft store, and it's sold as like needlepoint net. I got mine at Walmart. It comes in like a pack of 5 for $1.98 or something. It's really inexpensive. So before we can use this, this is a scrap piece. We have to take the sheet we're going to use and rough it up. And let's go ahead and set up for that, and I'll show you how you're going to rough the plastic up. So we're going to go over the process of how to rough the netting up so that the algae will stick to it. So we have a 4-inch hole saw. Any size will really do, just no bit in the center. And what you're going to do is just work this around like this, all around, and the point of it is to rough this netting up. That way the algae has something to bond to. So just work it around. Now I did this already and then just rinsed it off a little bit, and actually the water helped kind of sticks it to my metal table saw here. So once you get going good, you'll know you're doing good because you'll have all this plastic here, all these little bits that are coming off, and in the teeth. Keep your fingers away, and you'll kind of know you got it because it'll be nice and rough. And you just want to rough it up until it's pretty rough all around. Don't forget about your corners. Found if you go at an angle like this, it really helps gets those corners. And then the center, you just kind of give it a swirl. That really does a nice job. The other thing is this is oversized, so that way if I end up cutting this a little shorter this way and this way, the corners won't make a difference. The middle, which will be nice and rough. Okay, so now that you have it roughed up, let me just explain how it's going to work. You actually stick the netting inside of the groove, and what you'll do is we're going to make some clamps, and I'm going to show you how we can make PVC clamps, and you actually are going to hang this like this. That makes sense. You're actually going to hang the Algae Turf Scrubber just like this. You pump the water in through here, which remember goes through my 1/2-inch bulkhead, and then it rains down over top of this. You illuminate the whole area, and then algae will grow on this screen. When you're ready to harvest the algae or remove the nutrients from your system, you'll simply remove this, take a plastic credit card, squeegee, anything like that, and you'll get most of that algae off. Now you don't ever want to clean this completely. You want a little bit left so that the algae can continue to grow. And that's essentially the process behind the Algae Turf Scrubber. So what I'm going to do is, let me set up and I'll show you how we can make our own clamps that'll actually hold this netting up to here. Okay, so I found that if you have 1/2 inch PVC, this is just regular PVC, not CPVC, just regular 1/2 inch PVC. If you take a piece of 1 inch regular PVC, you cut the same groove down the center. Now you don't need to go all the way. Now what I'm going to do is, you can use your table saw or whatever method you feel comfortable with, and just cut a little tiny ring. Once you cut that little ring, it'll fit right over top of the 1/2 inch PVC, and then we're going to put a little tiny hole in this net right here at the top. So that way when the netting goes through, we'll be able to hook the this PVC through this net and actually hang it off of here. What I'm going to use are just some regular old PVC cutters, and we're just going to make a kind of a small ring here. And you want to try to make it flush so that it cuts nice and evenly. Alright, so when you cut this, you want your cut groove here to be on the bottom of the pipe. And that way when your blade comes down, it won't have a tendency to crack the plastic. So that's perfect. Now it's a little thick here on this side. The other method I've actually used to make these rings is to, before I put the groove in it, is to actually cut a nice even piece and then just put it in a bandsaw and just nick the end of it. Now what you'll do is, you can slide this one this way, and then you'll have a hole in your net and you'll be able to rotate that around and actually hang it upside down. And it works perfect. The other thing is, this is flexible enough, this piece, you can actually kind of manipulate it to get it to fit over top of the PVC, clip it on there, and then hang it just like that. Okay, so just in about a minute or so, I actually got 4 of these cut. Okay, so in about a minute or so, I got 4 of these cut. Just take your time. If you break one, just throw it in the garbage. It's no big deal. This one here is a little too wide, so I'm going to use 3. The ends here is what you really need to be perfectly and nice and thin. Again, like I said, the other option is you can just use a hand saw. That'll give you a nice clean cut, or a band saw. You could use the table saw, but your fingers are going to be awful close to this. And the other thing you have to worry about is this small piece falling down here in the hole. So that's why I'm not going to use the table saw for that procedure. Okay, so the next step here, I moved the aquarium over. I'm going to go through, I'm going to tighten my 2 bulkheads down, and I'm going to get set up with the PVC. Now I'm going to glue and Teflon tape all the fittings that are outside of an aquarium, because I don't want them to leak. Okay, so the next thing I'm going to do is get set up so that we can put our clamps and hold this netting on. Now, this netting is not going to be the final product. This is just a scrap I'm using. The actual netting I'm going to use is actually sitting in the overflow, and I'm trying to get some basically preliminary algae built up on it so that when I put it in the turf scrubber, it'll be ready to go. So I'm just going to show you the process. My process, I'm going to use a 1/2 inch threaded adapter to 1/2 inch PVC, and then I'm going to use a T. At the bottom of this T, I'm going to put a pipe going down, and that's going to basically support the other side so that all that pressure isn't on the bulkhead. And then at the bottom of this T, I'm going to run a 1/2 inch PVC down to this T as a foot. So essentially it's going to look just like this in the aquarium, of course further down though. So the way you get this set up is you stick it in your pipe, and then you just figure out with your clamp here where it lines up. So let's say we know it lines up here. We'll just cut a little square out. Like that, and then you can see it fits right through and holds it around. Let's do that again on the other side here. We'll line it up. cut out a square. Now for me, a 4x4 square is what I'm actually cutting out, so it works perfect. And then that slides right through there. And there you have it. Just trim this piece. Okay, so to get this set up in the aquarium, how I'm going to actually do it is, I measured this piece out so it's just long enough to fit in there. And then we'll just rotate it around. Probably would have been easier if I would have not put the netting on first. Now once you get it basically tight where you want it, then we're just going to hold the 1/2 inch fitting and then rotate the PVC inside of that fitting. Put our mesh material back up there, and there you have it. That's what it's going to look like. Now, obviously the piece I have is going to be the full length of my groove here, and then it's going to hang down just into about the bottom. I left mine longer on the bottom because I want the bottom of the net to hang in the water, and that should minimize the splashing. That way, as you can see here, there's a fitting on the bulkhead, and I'm going to either remove that or leave it based upon the depth of water that I want. But I don't want to hear the splashing. And the other thing about the splashing is then you have to worry about the salt spray. The next up here, we're just going to take some Teflon tape, and we're going to coat these threads with a little bit of Teflon tape so they don't leak. Do the same thing with my 1/2 inch NPT to a 1/2 inch push fitting. Now the line I'm going to use is just like RO line. It's that rigid plastic tubing. I'm just going to use 1/2 inch. And the reason why is because my particular pump, which is nothing special, it's just a Harbor Freight cheapo, 1/2 inch rigid line fits into this connector. It also fits right into the pump. So now I'll connect these two together here. Alright, so now I'm going to just thread these together. Just grab a wrench and I'll tighten these up. I'll be right back. Okay, now that I got that tight, I'll just thread this one in. Okay, now that I have that tight, at this point I have a 3/4 inch to 3/4 inch elbow for this one, but I don't know that I'm going to use it. I think at this point I'm just going to use the half inch barb to 3/4 inch, and then I'll just connect my soft tubing right to this. I did buy the elbow just in case I needed it here, because I wasn't sure if I wanted to set this in there and then put this here. So I have that just in case. So we'll just tighten this down. Alright, and you just want to make sure that you don't tighten the bulkheads too much. Remember, I said this is very thin glass. So if you put too much pressure, you're going to break it. You do not want this to leak, though, for obvious reasons. That's where it's going to end up sitting. The shelf is nothing fancy. It's just two little brackets, just a piece of scrap plywood I had laying around, and that's going to be it. Now above it is a shelf, and that's where I'm going to hang the light. I'm just going to use a fluorescent light for now. I think in my future I'm going to plan on building like a little LED setup with a couple reds and blues and try to use that to grow my algae. Alright, so the next step I'm going to do is get my PVC pipe cleaned up, get the pencil marks off of it, get my elbows in there, get the netting out, and then I'll bring you back and we'll see how we're doing. Alright, so the previous part of the video was probably about 3 weeks ago. Here is the current status with the Algae Turf Scrubber. And here was the hold up for it. So what happened was, like I said, I originally drilled the bulkheads on the top, or excuse me, the bottom and the side. And it's hard to see through the condensation here, but as you can see, here's a bulkhead here, the other one is down here. Now when I tightened those up, and after about 2 days of being on, prior to me actually putting water in the system, it cracked the glass. Now this 5.5 gallon glass is very thin. I believe it's probably 16th inch, maybe 1/8 inch glass. So it's like window pane stuff. And it's just not made for that pressure. So rather than scrap the whole project, because I already had the shelf installed, I already had holes drilled, I already had flexible tubing, what I decided to do was just repair it. So I had some thicker 1/4 inch glass, and I went ahead and just basically sealed over top of the existing glass. So I drilled another hole in the 1/4 inch glass, I siliconed it in, and I put it on the inside. And I'll take you in for a closer shot so you can see that. I also then did the same thing for the bottom. And that was really for more of just, I want to make sure it wasn't going to leak. And now for about 3 weeks, it's been going this strong. A couple other notes. I originally said I was going to use these fluorescent lights, which you can see here. And these are nothing fancy. They're just old fluorescent 18-inch tubes. They didn't do really well. And you can see that's the algae I have. So I said I was going to do LEDs, and I did. And here is what they're going to look like. There is one finished panel I just finished yesterday. So the video will be coming out for that. It's 11 LEDs. It's 4 red, 4 white, and 3 blue. And then I have 2 LED drivers controlling those. And so I'm going to try that, and we'll see how that does. Hopefully, I'll have about a week of data before I put out the LED video, so at least you'll know how it's doing. But the fluorescent strips didn't work at all. And of course, they use a lot of electricity, and they just didn't work. Okay, so as you can see here, you can see the silicone is actually in between the original factory glass, which is on the outside, and my new thicker glass on the inside. And so what I essentially did was added a complete another panel on the inside here. I sealed all the seams, let it dry for 2 days. I then water tested it to work fine. I then decided, well, while I'm at it, I might as well do the bottom. And I don't know if you're going to be able to see the bottom through all kind of the debris, but there is some silicone down in there. And so I did another piece on top. There is a good shot of the algae that's growing. And I know it's kind of hard to see through the screen, but it's more of like a sludge kind of buildup. Put a little light on it, and it just was not really growing the way I wanted it to. So I just switched to the LEDs. Yesterday I just finished the one panel. I'm going to make another one, and I'm basically going to put light on this side and light on this side. Alright, so another note. Originally I told you I was using a Harbor Freight pump, and you can see here is the rigid line. So I was using a small, cheap Harbor Freight pump. However, because of the height difference, it only made it to about halfway. And so I had to upgrade to a stronger pump. So it comes up through that rigid pipe here. I'll show you the flexible line here underneath. This is it here. This is just 1/2 inch flexible hose. And you can see this is the pump that I'm using now. This is an Aqueon pump. I believe that's a 1700, and then there is the line coming down. Now, one thing I don't like, this pump is a little too strong, so I get a little splashing on the return line. Now, I might try putting a valve in there and seeing if I can't get it to be a siphon, so I might try that. The reason why the threaded adapter's in there is I was trying to reduce it enough where it would basically make its own siphon. That didn't work. So right now I'm just kind of dealing with the splash, and I haven't really thought of any other solution. But that's what I have. You can see this is the rigid line here that runs up, and then that's the flexible line returning. And just so you have an idea of height difference, we'll back you out here. So here is, see if I can get both of them in the shot. You can see there is the Algae Turf Scrubber. So it's about at the canopy level. The bottom of the canopy right about here, and then as you can see down there is the sump. So I'm pumping that up about 3 feet or so, 36 inches. So the little small pump wasn't enough. I had to go to the bigger Aqueon pump. Okay, so let's wrap this up. What would I do different? I think I would use acrylic instead of glass. The glass in this size aquarium is just too small. The other thing is, at this point now, I have 2 pieces of glass and a tube of silicone involved. So it probably would have been easier if I wanted to use glass. And the reason why I went with this is I wanted a specific size to fit in this spot. I could have went a little longer, but I didn't want to go too tall and I didn't want to go too wide. I think if I had it over again, I would just build a custom aquarium out of glass, because that's pretty much at this point what I've done. I could have just bought 1/4 inch glass from the store, glued it together, and made my own custom aquarium. So acrylic was an option, customized aquarium. I got this on sale at Petco for, I think, $11. So for the price, that's kind of why I went this route. The other thing, when I was doing my drilling glass video, I didn't actually record this one. I tried to record the 10-gallon and it failed miserably. So I might put that up just so you can see what I did wrong, and that way hopefully you won't crack your glass. I will say drilling this glass is very difficult. I've drilled thicker aquariums, like 20-gallon size, and that's 1/4 inch glass. That went really well. This thin stuff is very thin. Now, when I cut the replacement pieces, I actually did it in my drill press, and that went really easy because I had something that I was actually pushing against. So anyhow, I mean, you know, drilling has some risks associated with it. However, I will say the thicker glass for me has been easier. So one of the other challenges I'm going to have to try to work out is how to deal with this fog and condensation. Because obviously when I set the LEDs up against it, it runs into, can light really get through there? Now I have had a lid across the whole aquarium, so I don't know if that has to do with the problem. What I might do is cut a strip in the back, so that way some air can get in and maybe that'll reduce the condensation. I'm not quite sure. So we'll have to see how that goes. But anyhow, look forward to the LED video in the future. And please let me know what you think of the video down at the bottom. If you have any other ideas as far as how the screen roughening works or anything, tips, improvement, please post the comments down below. That way everybody can benefit from your comments. Thanks again for watching. Until next time.